Welcome back to the GP Productions podcast. Okay, welcome back to the show. And today I've got my very first ring announcer on the show, a man that's been in the business since the 1993, I believe.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Mr. Rich Palladino. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good. How's things where you are over in America these days with all this
Beautiful.
crazy stuff?
Beautiful. Today's American holiday, Labor Day, which just means people don't work on Labor Day. So good. Beautiful weather. Walked about 4.5 miles today because I was bored. I don't want to say that my real job defines me and occupies my time, but my real job defines me and occupies all my time, apparently. So
Yeah.
doing very good, though. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, and I've seen your photos on Facebook. You're in great shape.
I'm getting there. I've been a large gentleman my entire life. About 20 something years ago, I did lose like 100 pounds and then slowly gained it all back. And as of this past Saturday's weigh-in, I'm down almost 82 pounds. So,
Wow.
yeah, I feel great. I feel great. Spending a lot of money on new, tuxedo accoutrement for shows and whatnot, but it's worth it. So,
Yeah.
just to feel better and look better is worth it for
Yeah.
me. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. In terms of the business of wrestling, it's a crazy world. How did you become involved in it?
I always tell people I'm a fan before I'm even like somebody that works in the business. So I was a fan probably since I was about 8 years old. I grew up on Bruno Sammartino and Bob Backlund. Backlund was champion. Bruno was kind of on his way out, more like special attraction. But he was the commentator every Saturday morning when I watched wrestling. And Backlund was the champion. And, 1978, 79, I didn't realize how vanilla Bob Backlund was, but he was my guy and still is to this day. And I was just a fan. And then I met a gentleman. I'll give you the shorter version. I met somebody that ran a show out here in New England. His name was Gordon Scazzari. And he has since passed away, but he ran one show. And I sold myself as wanting to be a ring announcer and ended up doing commentary for the show that I went to with the man that would end up really breaking me into the business, which was the Boston bad boy, Tony Rumble, who was a staple out here, especially in New England. But he did stuff early days of ECW and IWCCW with the Savoldies. We swapped numbers when we did commentary together for that in a studio in Maine for that AWF show. We kept in touch. He started running shows under the Century Wrestling Alliance banner, and October 23rd, 1993, you never forget your first. That was my first gig as a ring announcer. That's what I always christen my anniversary in wrestling as, not so much the studio stuff that he and I did that never saw the light of day. But yeah, just right place, right time, and it's always what I wanted to do.
Yeah, did you always want to be a ring announcer, or did you have any different plans to work elsewhere in the business as a referee or anything like that?
When I was
or
a
even
kid,
a performer?
when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be a wrestler. In fact, when WWF had come to my high school in 1985, I met two gentlemen, one that I'm really still pretty tight with. I met Paul Roma and Mario Mancini, who I still keep in touch with. And Mario had actually given me the phone number for Tony Altamori, had a school somewhere in Connecticut. And I told my mom, hey, I'm going to go be a wrestler. You have to drive me to Connecticut. And it was about 3 hours away. And she was like, yeah, we're not doing that. But like I said, I was always a big kid. So I knew I didn't have the physical tools, but I knew I had the verbal skills, I guess. So I always wanted to be the announcer, and I always emulated or imitated the ring announcers. That was always my thing. So I always that and backstage commentary. And I had done commentary for one of my home promotions for close to 20 years, but we just kind of changed that up recently. But ring announcing is my thing. And I love it. I love every minute of it still to this day, 28 years later of doing it.
And since the pandemic, obviously, you've probably been out of work, have you, in terms of wrestling?
Yeah. I mean, fortunately I have a day job that pays all the bills and keeps the roof over our heads here. But being on the road, whether it just be through New England or throughout the Northeast for the past, at that point, 27 years, it was, I thought I was just going to pack it all in. I've been doing this forever. I never had a national contract. The world's never going to be, everybody went through these moments of doubt, I think, during the pandemic. What I love to tell people is I love my wife and I have 15-year-old twins. I love my kids, but I never want to be locked down in a house with them for 15 or 16 months again. It's just, this is my office. Where I'm sitting right now is my office for my real job. Now, all of a sudden, my wife was working the floor above and my kids were being homeschooled because of the COVID. And man, it was life changing, but all it took me was a couple of shows and I was like, yeah, no, I can't stop doing this. I don't want to be that guy that just sits at home every weekend. I really love what I do. So happy to still be doing it. Keep grinding.
I often talk to people and it's kind of like, I do say to them, like, once you dip your toe into the wrestling business, you're never getting out of there.
Yeah. And there's an old adage too, that once you're in the business, whatever age you are, when you break in, that's how old you are for the rest of your career. So that makes me a 24-year-old man. So I feel pretty damn good about that. And I pretty much act like it sometimes too. So it is what it is.
Yeah. So when you were working, say, in the 90s, and then how did you get the call in 96 to go to ECW? How did that come about?
So great question. So the very first independent show I did in 93, Tommy Dreamer and Taz were on it. And to this day, I still keep in touch with Dreamer like regularly and see him often. ECW was running some shows up here, and they were using another ring announcer who did the ring announcing for Killer Kowalski's shows. But he was an older gentleman, like older than me at that time anyways, and just didn't connect with the crowd. And I went to a show. I knew Dreamer, I knew Taz, I knew the Eliminators, who were both in the area. But I also knew the local promoters, Mike Bonansky and Paul Richard. Paul refereed for ECW for years, and they were the local promoters for Boston. And it was funny. I'd gone to, they had done a TV taping the night before in Webster, Mass. that I went to. I had a comp ticket. I went and watched the show. I went to Revere, Massachusetts the next night, and Paul's like, "Hey, brother, do you have your tux with you?" I'm like, "Of course." He's like, "All right, they want you to ring announce." I was like, "Awesome." So that was just it. Everybody knew me like through Tony Rumble, because Tony was very well respected in the business. And Paul Heyman had worked with Tony for years in ICW, our ICW. And that was it. And I had enough people vouching for me. And that was it. Paul Heyman hired me on the spot after my first night there. It was just like, "I want you every time I come to New England." So that was just, I was stroke of luck. I mean, I was just right place, right time, but I was a huge ECW fan. So it was really awesome. It was a really great time. I had about a 2.5-year run there until the money started drying up, I think. But yeah, I mean, made some really good friends, guys I still talk with to this day. So it's very lucky, very fortunate.
What was that locker room like to be around? Because there's an outside perspective, but like people like me can read things online and people like everyone else can read things online. But was it just a bunch of crazy guys, or when it came down to the nitty gritty, were they professional, ready to go and focused?
Definitely professional, ready to go and focused. Paul Heyman would have these kind of like what you saw in Beyond the Mat, where he was at the ECW arena before the first pay-per-view and he was given the speech. You would think that was just for the cameras for the documentary, but he would have a meeting like that before every show where he's such a motivational speaker. Like it would just be like, "All right, go kill." And everybody in that locker room would be like, "All right, we're going to go kill it." And they did. There was some craziness. There was, there was always goofing around, but once they came through the curtain, it was ECW, and it was like the most realistic wrestling there was at that time, and their legacy still lives on, in my opinion.
Mhm.
It was no nonsense, all business. I was always walking on eggshells, even though they were super nice to me. But the locker room atmosphere was great. It was almost like a family atmosphere. Because I remember there would be like one performer that would like be in charge of, like, now this is the '90s, like fan mail, and I remember
Yeah.
like they would just pull out this bag of mail and be like, okay, hey, dream of this is yours, whatever. People were like writing into their favorite wrestler and stuff like that. I got to go to dinner and have drinks a couple of times, which was the crazier side of it, and we'll just leave it at that. Um, but I mean, it was a very family atmosphere. Like, it was just, everybody was always super cool to me. I remember bringing my wife to a show, and Paul Heyman, like just charming her and just being like, "What's a beautiful lady like you doing with an ugly guy like this?" Oh, and she's like, "Ha ha ha." But it was just Heyman being Heyman. I mean, I remember every show, like, Sammy would be like, "Hey, can you fill my cooler with ice?" And that was like my thing. I was like the ice man. I would have to fill up Sandman's cooler with ice so his beers would be cold. It was just random, like, just so many funny different things. And I do remember one night right before Raven was leaving for WCW, he had just got out of the shower, and the boys were trying to push him through the curtain with a towel wrapped around his waist. It was just like the most random of things. Like, he just popped out for a second and then went back in, and it was a one floor building, so not everybody could see it, but it was just that kind of goofiness that was so much fun to be around, you know.
Yeah, but there was obviously a bond there as well.
Oh, there definitely was. It was a super family atmosphere, and every interview I ever do about ECW, the one guy that got me through it and prepped me through everything is my dear friend Joel Gertner, because he was transitioning from ring announcer to like heel mouthpiece for Devon Dudley at the time, and others. And he just coached me through everything from my first night all the way through, and we've become like good friends ever since. I mean, not to go ramble on too much, but there was just one show where he had one pair of black pants and they split right up the middle. And thank God my wife, with her fashion background and her degree in fashion design, like, I was like, Joel, just give me your pants. She ain't going to be happy about it, but my wife can fix these so we can do the next show tomorrow night without you having to go buy new pants or wear, have your
Yeah.
junk hanging out and stuff like that. It's just that kind of camaraderie and atmosphere. It was just a great, great place to work. I credit is like literally like top three moments of my many years in this business,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
What is the hardest thing, in your opinion, about ring announcing?
Um, the hardest thing, I think, more so for others than for me, is, I think, the biggest thing a ring announcer needs to focus on, and I wish I saw more of it out there, is the attention is not on you; it's on the performers. Um, but the actual hardest thing, I would say, especially for me at 52 years old, is remembering stuff. I always pride myself on not looking at an index card, because that's what you would see on TV.
Mhm.
Um, After the pandemic, I find myself, I used to know everybody's names and hometowns and rattle them off. I find that after that, 15, 16 months off, I forgot stuff. But I would say just memorizing stuff. I look at it like memorizing a line, as an actor would, or an actress would, in a play or in a movie. Um, that's it. And sometimes I have what I like to, call a brain fart, and I will have to look at the card. But, um, you know, the hardest thing is, remembering stuff and knowing your spot, not just in the ring, but mentally, visually. I've been telling other ring announcers, new ones that ask me for advice, like, how many times you see like a wrestler striking a pose in front of the hard cam, and you see like a ring announcer's head right behind. I mean, that's something I've incorporated in the past couple of years. I try and know where I am in the ring too, because that pose in front of the hard cam could be a still shot for a promo photo, or something for a video, or a teaser on, something on IWTV, which I'll talk about later. But of course, I got to plug my IWTV. But
Yeah.
it's just little things like that. I hate to sound like The Rock. Know your role, but know it in more than just you're there to say names. The show is not about you. They're there to see the performers. You just enhance the performance. So, but remembering stuff would definitely be the hardest thing as I get older,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
It's probably a whole different element from doing shows back in the day, a few independent shows, to then doing shows that are being recorded for television. You just touched on it there with camera positions and things like that.
Yeah.
Was that change hard for you, or what way did you manage it?
As far as what the camera positioning and whatnot.
Yeah, as far as being from like say a small independent show to like a show that's going on TV.
Yeah, that's definitely much more nerve wracking. That's a lot more preparation going into stuff like that. I mean, even like the few times that I was on ECW TV, like I knew. I mean, my brain was a lot younger then too, but I knew my stuff and I would rehearse it and practice it, so I wouldn't even have to look at a card. But even now with the stuff that we do on IWTV for Beyond Wrestling's, you know, weekly shows, which are going to be starting up again now, I know that that's getting a lot of views, so I want to be on my A game best I can. So the positioning thing has just been my new thing. I usually take a corner with a referee or opposite the referee. But as far as trying to be spot on, I'm slowly getting back to it, man. I'm telling you, that time off just killed me. So
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question. But yeah.
So you've got 3 Hall of Fame inductions for ring announcing. Do you want to tell us about them?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning it. One is the group that I grew up with, which was Century Wrestling Alliance with Tony Rumble, eventually became part of the National Wrestling Alliance, Billy Corgan's NWA now.
Yep.
So I have one induction for NWA New England. I have one for the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, which is a local organization that my friend Joe Bruin put together probably about 10 or 12 years ago. So I was humbled to be a part of that. And the Chaotic Wrestling Hall of Fame, which is a company that I'm very proud of that I've been with for 21 years. So those are actually over this shoulder, that shoulder. There we go.
Yep.
So I have those and another recognition award I got from an independent promotion from like 20 years ago that doesn't run anymore. But those hang proudly. Chaotic's there at the top, then the New England Hall of Fame, then NWA New England. It's all just based on size. But to be recognized, you know, in my field is pretty humbling experience. So I take those very seriously and probably tag them on all my social medias and all that stuff. I'm very proud of all those awards. So thank you.
No problem. What is the craziest thing you've seen happening in the ring?
Craziest thing I saw in the ring, and I've said I will mention it, but not talk about it in depth anymore to the respect of the performers who are no longer with us. My first ECW show was the mass transit incident. So
yes,
without a doubt, that was the absolute craziest thing. And I have a lot of people that ask me to be on podcasts specifically for that. And I'm like, what more can I add? You know, well, your perspective. Well, yeah, I was right at the ring, but you know, I can't explain it any better than the late New Jack did, or, you know, the late mass transit or his family did, you know, on news reports and whatnot. But it was terrifying. I do tell people that when you hear the kid's father saying, ring the effing bell, he's 17, he's looking right at me and telling me to ring the bell. That was my first night in ECW. And I always tell people I wasn't doing anything unless Mr. Paul Heyman told me to do something. So, not that it would have mattered. I could have sat there and pounded on the bell all night. You know, it was just, but definitely without a doubt, don't even have to think about it. That was the absolute craziest thing I've ever experienced in my life.
That was your first night there.
That was the night. Hey, do you have your tuxedo, brother? Because I was they had done a show in Webster, Massachusetts the night before, and I was going to both. And you know, even to this day, I don't go anywhere without my tux unless it's a really bad show and I'm just going to hang out. But
yeah,
I always have my tuxedo with me. You know, and I wear a tuxedo because that's my level of respect that I have for this business. To me, every promoter, every fan, every promoter, every performer, every athlete, every fan deserves my absolute best, and I want to enhance that performance and make it look as professional as possible. So I'm not some like rich kid that just has money to go buy tuxedos. You know, Mr. Gordon Scazzari bought me my first tuxedo in 1992, 93. And, you know, when I outgrew that one, I was on my own dime after. But yeah, that was the mass transit was who would have known? And Joel Gertner, my coach for the night, had told me, we do boxing style intros here. If something's going to start hot, you will know about it. And when you will not introduce the gangsters, because once they come out and throw the garbage can in the ring, just get out.
Yeah.
Fair enough, no problem. But yeah, that was my very first night with ECW, November 23rd, 1996.
It reminds me of my first time working in Dublin. I worked in Dublin for 7 years, and I went up to let's just say it was kind of a rough area.
Okay.
And I went there, and my first night on the job, we had a security guy because it was that kind of store. We needed security, and two guys came in and bet the shit out of him.
Oh God.
And I was only in the job maybe an hour.
Yeah.
And they were following this guy around the store. Now he looked like he was going to maybe rob something. And then his friend came in, and two of them attacked the security guard, blood everywhere. The cops were there. The guards, we call them over here, were there.
Sure.
And I was like, what am I doing here? So that's kind of like my kind of similar experience to you there.
And I can tell you, like, right hand to God, I was terrified, like, because I had never seen that much blood. And again, from my perspective, that close to the ring. But it kind of shook me up too, because I was kind of like, I don't ever want to like be in harm's way. I've never taken a bump. I've never drawn a dime in this business. I've never done anything to, be able to work with somebody in that capacity. But at the same time, you never know if somebody's having a bad day and wants to mess with you a little bit too. So it made me nervous. It did make me nervous because it was very gory. Kind of same as what you saw, with the security guard getting beaten up. It was, whatever. It was, I still get chills thinking about it, but it was what it was. It's a part of wrestling history now, and that's always like the jaw dropper is, oh, you worked for ECW. Like, yeah, when did you start? I'm like, November 96. Sometimes I don't want to glorify, and they'd be like, wait a minute. Were you? Yeah, I was. Yeah. So
I'm sure you just get asked about that, as you touched on it, like all the time. Like I wasn't even going to ask. Well, I suppose that question in a way kind of led into it. But one thing we'll finish up talking about. I sent New Jack a message a couple of months ago before he passed away, and to come on the podcast. And he only sent me one message back. This is about 2 months before he died, and he just said, "Hell yes, I'll come on the podcast. I love my fans."
Yes.
And that's the last thing I heard from him.
Yeah, and honestly, a company that I work with, Big Time Wrestling, they're a national promotion, but they are based here. And my friend that runs it, he does these he did these virtual signings during the pandemic, and we did one with New Jack, January of this year, in fact. And I ended up driving him from Boston, a little over an hour west to where we were set up to do the filming. And my God, he was so cool, so nice, so relaxed, very entertaining. I mean, even to the point where, you could say, oh, hey, can you make that out to, hey, Maurice, ECF&W, New Jack, however you want to personalize. Somebody had actually was on, it's like on Facebook Live, and it said, hey, can you write, and they wanted to write something like F Mass Transit, like the dude had it coming, and he literally was like, no, I'm not writing that, which I thought was really, really cool considering, everything we've heard and seen. But, his passing, really, because he was like somebody that I was scared of from what I first saw. But then, I mean, I recall having, dinner with him, my wife, my friend Jose Perez and his wife, and New Jack. He's like the most entertaining, his stories, just his vernacular, just the way he talks. It was so entertaining. So somebody I was terrified of because I didn't know. Then somebody that I got to share a car with, a couple of months before he passed, which I totally cherished that moment, and the fact that I got his action figure signed and a picture signed. But it's a shame, but that's this business, man. But he was a really good dude. And if you haven't done already, I suggest get his book. I got his book, and I read it not too long after he passed, and it's a hell of a story.
Yeah.
For sure.
Coming back to the present day.
Sure.
what promotions are you working in now? You kind of touched on a few things earlier.
Yeah, as I get older too, and as the world's opening back up, I have three primary companies that take precedence over others, and it's no disrespect to any other promotion. Chaotic Wrestling, who I've been with since 2000. Limitless Wrestling, whose T-shirt I'm wearing, up in Maine. I've been with them for 5 years maybe now, 5 or 6 years, and then Beyond Wrestling is those are my top three. Beyond Wrestling, I've been with them since the first American Runner in 2013. I've said, and again, it's not a slight on anybody, any other promotion, but that's the company that kind of like rejuvenated my love and wanting to keep doing this. Because it was different. Because even though it's based out of New England per se, it wasn't like the same New England guys on the same shows. And we're seeing a lot of that now where the New England companies that are just the New England companies will always be the New England companies, but Limitless, Chaotic, stuff like that, starting to bring in other indie talent, just to enhance their shows and whatnot. But that was the thing with Beyond. I mean, my first show had Colt Cabana on it, had Masada on it, had Kevin Steen on it, Drew Gulak, EYFBO, who are now Santana and Ortiz. It was like all these indie guys that I'd only heard of, and now here they were right in my backyard. I mean, I live in southeastern Massachusetts, but we were in Providence, Rhode Island, and it was just, I friggin' loved it. And, now I've seen all the different changes. If you told me that I'd be doing weekly episodic Beyond Wrestling shows on IWTV, I would have said you were crazy. But we're having our season 3 of Uncharted Territory starting up on Thursday, October 7th. We have a 13-week contract that takes us up to the end of the year. Limitless, I'm usually up there once or twice a month. Love the fans up there. Love the fans everywhere I go. But my God, I missed a show. And when I announced that I wasn't going to be there so I could put over the kid that was replacing me, when I said I wasn't there, they were like booing me out of the building. And I had to turn them around to give some love to my buddy Ethan Scott, who was going to be covering for me because I was away. But and then Chaotic Wrestling. I've been there from day one, technically day 2. Because my beloved New England Patriots were playing the very first time I got booked for Chaotic, and I had tickets.
Yeah.
And it was a festival show, so it really wasn't like a real show. But I've been with them since 21 years, since September of 2000. And they're doing, great things, different organization completely than what it was before. It's not your dad's Chaotic Wrestling. But our next show, we've got Bear Bronson, who was a Chaotic original, who's now part of AEW as Bear Country. And we have Paul London actually coming in to challenge we just put our heavyweight title on I shouldn't say put it on, Davey N, who's one of my favorite people inside wrestling, outside of wrestling, just such a talented performer. First female to ever hold the Chaotic Wrestling heavyweight title, and she's going to be defending it against Paul London on September 17th. So, those are my top 3, and they get top billing just based on longevity. That's my loyalty factor, I guess, to the biz. So,
from the outside looking in at the moment, there seems to be, with what's going on at AEW, with Fight TV, with different networks and things like that, there's a little bit of a wrestling, I think, rejuvenation happening at the moment, especially after the pandemic as well. Do you find that over there?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I watched All Out. I mean, I don't know if I'm ruining anything by saying as we're recording, but I watched All Out last night with Drew Cordero, who owns Beyond Wrestling. I had 2 fantasy football drafts at 8:00, and then drove my ass to his place. So I got to watch the last 2 hours, and then I watched the first hour on the replay. It was such a great night. But yeah, I mean, there's so many avenues out there. I mean, when you look at what WWE has for their, whatever it is, 7 hours of weekly television, AEW now with 3 hours of TV, and then all the online content on YouTube. But like you said, Fight TV, independent wrestling TV, as I've been plugging, because, I'm on it a lot. Title Match Wrestling Network, which is another one that I usually work with during Mania, during WrestleMania weeks. There's so much out there, and I think people are willing to not only subscribe to a lot of these, and if you're going to pick one, please do IWTV. and use
Mhm.
the passcode one fall because I get a little kickback.
Yeah.
But I think there's so much out there now. What I'm seeing is post-pandemic, the fans are coming out and they're willing to pay more money for a ticket. Especially when we had capacity issues here in New England where you could only have so many people in the building. Well, you got to jack up those ticket prices.
Yeah, of course.
We were doing shows at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, which is where all the wrestlers from Chaotic train. And we were charging like $40 or $45 just to have 50 to 100 people in the wrestling school. People are willing to pay for a ticket. People are willing to buy merchandise. And every single show that they put a microphone in my hand, and I always say, the pandemic took a hit on these independent, contractors that were making a living doing this. Please support your favorite wrestler, buy a t-shirt, picture, blah, 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 blah. And fans are doing it. And I think that's great because I think there's no other fans in any form of entertainment or sport or whatever you want to call it that are as loyal and devoted as a wrestling fan. And coming out of the pandemic, and hopefully things don't change, it's just been, I know my calendar's full and I know the people are coming out, and it's a beautiful thing to see. 100%.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up then, Rich,
Sure.
Do you want to tell people where they can find you on your socials?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm old, so I'm always on Facebook, and it's just Rich Palladino. Right here on the screen is my Twitter handle. I guess that's what the kids call it, at Rich Palladino. Yeah. And I'm on Instagram as Ringside Rich. And I did have a Ringside Rich collectibles or something on there that my daughter actually helped me set up at the beginning of the year, because I am a collector and I have a lot of cool signed action figures and stuff, and just some rare stuff that I was putting up there. I haven't done that for a few months, but I do have to start up again. One of the fans reminded me I haven't done that for a while, but that's where I am on social media. And IWTV, passcode 1fall. Support. I always tell people hashtag support independent wrestling, but Chaotic Wrestling, Beyond Wrestling, Limitless Wrestling, whatever wrestling you choose to support, please do, because that's where the stars of today are coming from. Maybe not so much at WWE anymore, if I'm hearing things correctly, but just continue to support these great athletes that honestly do put their bodies on the line and travel great distances just to perform for you. So that's my media pitch. So,
Rich, it was an absolute honor to talk to you today, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, we just connected on my old people Facebook, and and you would ask me again. I sincerely thank you. I'm honored to be the first ring announcer you've ever asked. I said that to my daughter probably about an hour ago. We were out doing some errands, and I'm like this one's in Ireland. She's never had a ring announcer on. I'm like, I'm honored to be like the first one. So there's a lot of other good ones out there too, which I'm sure will follow suit. But thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, buddy. Thank you.